Hi everybody, Mrs. Tamita here. This week for art class, we are going to continue talking about pop art, which was the art movement that took place in the 1950s through the 1970s. And last time we talked about how pop artists use everyday objects as their subjects, but today we're going to talk about incorporating food into pop art. So looking back on the past couple of weeks, we started by looking at this paperclip and we asked, is a paperclip art? Well, not a normal paperclip, but what pop artists did was they would take those everyday objects and use them as subjects for their art. What pop artists did is they reimagined what art could be to make something brand new, and they took a whole different way of looking at art. So we had artists like Claes Oldenburg creating giant sculptures of everyday objects like dustpans. We had Andy Warhol, and he was creating prints of things like soup cans. And Tyler Spangler is a modern day artist who was kind of inspired by pop artists. He used food in his artwork. But let's look at Claes Oldenburg's artwork a little bit. First, let's see if there's something we can find in common between these pieces of art. Look at all three of them, and I wonder what they have in common. If you noticed that they're all food, then you're correct. So this is a huge sculpture on top of a building of a melting ice cream cone. This is another large sculpture of a hamburger, and another of a sandwich. So Claes Oldenburg is very well known for his use of food in his artwork, but we're going to combine that with another pop artist style. This pop artist is Andy Warhol, and he is probably the most famous of all the pop artists. And again, we have something that all three of these works by Andy Warhol have in common. They don't all look super similar. They're not all of the same thing this time. So, what do they have in common? If you noticed that they all show repetition, or the subject is repeating in each work, then you are correct. So Andy Warhol, like I said, is probably the most famous pop artist, but he used repetition in his artwork a lot. So what does that have to do with us? What are we going to do for our work? We are going to combine the work of Claes Oldenburg and Andy Warhol for our project this week, and we are going to create a repetitive drawing of a food. So it should be something you can draw similarly 4 times and use as much detail as possible, and you don't need to color in yet. And when you're done, you'll take a picture and turn it in. And here is my example. As you can see, I chose a food. I chose sushi. And I showed repetition in my drawing as well. So here's me starting my repetitive food drawing. I'm working in my sketchbook and I'm just using a pencil to start with. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to very lightly sketch in a couple lines to divide my paper into 4 equal parts. So one line going straight down the middle, one line going straight across, and they don't need to be perfect, just about even. So what I'll do is I will draw my food of choice, which for me it's sushi. So I'm going to draw my sushi in one box and then try to draw the exact same thing in the next 3 boxes. It's okay if they're not exactly the same, just try to make them as similar as you can. And we will stop this week when we're done drawing, but we will work on coloring next week. Have fun, everybody.